I appreciate you clapping before I even talk. That's very helpful. Lot of people ask, is this the field you were intended to be in? And actually, it's not. The field I was intended to be in was the budget field, but with 7 children at the house and always changing, there's always risk at the house. So here's where I come to communicate to you. But I'd ask that you strap in and hang on. I've got a good number of slides, and you may get some slide burns on this, but hopefully there'll be some value to this. And I want to talk about necessity. You know, thinking about Texas, and I was also thinking that discussion, we all have a number of necessities that are coming to us on a daily basis, and it changes from day to day. I see it at the House, but I also see it at the state, and you do as well. So what I really wanted to talk about is how innovation is helping us respond to necessities. But first, talk about some, this is about the Southern way. I wanted to throw out a couple different sayings that you may hear in the South. Rubbernecking, y'all probably heard that. Bless your heart, and you have to put a real good slang on that. Hold your horses. I think that's across the country. You're in high cotton is really where you want to be, at least for a while. You can't make silk purse out of a cow's ear. Fine as a frog's hair, and then bless your heart. But, for North Carolina, there you go. For North Carolina, the real key saying that we've been looking at lately is necessity is the mother of all inventions. And I think that's the case for all of us. And that necessity could happen at any point in time during the week, during the day. So what I'd like to do is to go over a number of things about North Carolina and some necessities that have come forward. Now, one of our necessities is you can see North Carolina has significantly grown. I can tell you over half of the people in North Carolina now were not in North Carolina 10 years ago. And so it's a significant change in the makeup, but also in the population. These are some numbers that, based on geocoding, our policies we came up with. We've got about 5.2 million buildings in the state of North Carolina. Of those, 303,000 are in the floodplain. Of those, only 132,000 have actual flood policies. You can see our insurance cover is about $33 billion, but I can tell you that is significantly underrated. And then you can see down at the bottom that the percent total of special flood hazard area is 80%. Get it to switch. Sorry, clicking too hard. This is really where all of our policies fall out. These are really the major metropolitan centers that we have in the west, down out near Asheville. We also have in Mecklenburg County, Wake County, but the real significant issue is most of our policies are along the coast, which just by surprise we have hurricanes coming and responding or affecting. Our real catalyst for the state of North Carolina, I remember coming to Charlotte in 2000 to the conference, and that was our first year when we had said we were going to start doing true floodplain mapping in the state of North Carolina. And Floyd was our big event. That was the catalyst for us. You can see this is Floyd. It was about 63 counties that were federally declared disasters. It ended up being close to $6 billion of damage. And I can tell you there was a real question about the floodplain at that point in time. So I'm going to talk about a number of necessities that from that point in time happened and how we responded. The first one was about accurate flood hazard identification.
Most of these maps are over 10 years old. Some are over 15 years old. They are hard to read. They're based on coarse, inaccurate data. In some cases, the information stops right at the corporate limits. I'm not sure if the right people are purchasing flood insurance at the right rate. How can I be expected to enforce these so-called flood maps? We need seamless, accurate, statewide flood maps that can be trusted.
So I imagine each one of y'all have heard that same saying, whether it's from a legislator, from a floodplain administrator such as yourself, even from individuals who were saying, I didn't know I needed flood insurance. So towards that requirement, we began developing some Innovations. Get this thing to keep clicking. You can see the yellow ones are really the ones I want to speak to. Topographic data, LIDAR, was a significant one for us. Model-backed floodplains was also an important one. And then a modernized distribution system that was not just paper maps, but digital. I think we've all heard of LIDAR. Some people have not. It stands for Light Detection and Ranging. It was basically a light sensor technology that came up in the late 70s. North Carolina in 2000 decided to fly the whole state with digital LIDAR. This has been honestly a silver bullet to help the necessity of accurate maps. We went from having some very coarse data to having data that was about 20 centimeters to the bare earth. This is sorry. I'm getting good at this. So this is the map of the state of North Carolina once we had collected all of the LIDAR. I will say it was an expensive map at the time. It was about $275 per square mile. But this map was significant in moving forward. However, many of y'all have heard that LIDAR has moved forward as well, and I'll just tell you we're on our second generation of LIDAR. LIDAR that is now being promoted by USGS, it's called 3-Depth, 3D elevation program, and that accuracy will now take us to points at a 95% confidence of about 3 inches to the bare earth. That will significantly help us understand how the water will flow. These are the number of points that are actually available. You can see the dramatic difference. That's what we thought we were in high cotton back in 2000. The points were about every 10 feet. This is the points to the QL2 now. So you can see it's a significant difference in the number of points. It's actually 2 points per square meter. So what does that do for us? This is actually a cross-section. You can see down at the bottom the actual survey elevation of the channel. And you've got the 30-meter dim that some of you work off of. You can see that line does not accurately reflect the flood. You then have the 10-meter profile, which is a little better, but it really does not reflect that. Sorry. And then you can see the red line is the 3-meter profile that we had back in 2000. And then most importantly is the 3-depth, the quality level 2, and that's actually directly on the line. So I think it will be a significant improvement for us. So this is another example of that LIDAR data. We can very easily classify different structures, whether it's ground, bare earth, whether it's buildings, and then you can actually see on some of these the actual building, the power lines that are being associated with that as well. I think it'll be a very strong tool for us. This is another example of that data. You can see you have different sets of information, classifications, elevations, intensity. So then we also collected data, and that elevation data that we collected gave us the ability to do limited detailed studies. You know, we tell people we've studied almost 30,000 stream miles, and they say, how do you do the Cadillac? Well, folks, we haven't done the Cadillac. We've only done a certain detail. What we've done is a significant amount of limited detail that actually has a base flood elevation, and that's because we had good, accurate elevation. This is the flood theme that we ended up with across the whole state. It covers about 20% of the land mass. These were the maps that we thought, once again, we were in high cotton with. You had a imagery behind it with the flood theme. And this was an example of the flood theme. But now we're moving to, and what we've been working on is actually taking that elevation data and the water surface information, and now we're making a gridded raster. And that means you can click any point on that raster and it gives you an actual base flood elevation within a 10-foot grid. And so it's definitely helping us out. We then subtract it from the elevation data from the ground. We also then have a grid that gives us a depth every 10 feet. And then we have the statistical probability that allows us to calculate in a 30-year mortgage who's going to flood and how often will they flood. This was an example of the modernized distribution system that we developed back in 2000. This is also a PDF that was available out on the site. And this was actually the flood theme, the map. But I want to make a point here, and this was all PDFs that were being put out there. Well, the next necessity that came about was the one for efficiency. And coming from the budget office, I certainly understood this one.
These days, budgets are tight. Folks expect more product for less money. We have got to find a way to do more for less. We've got to acquire, generate, and publish this data more efficiently if we're going to survive in the modern world.
So have you ever heard that necessity? Look, guys, got to cut your budget, or you've got to do more, but I don't have more money for you. Well, North Carolina looked at the mapping process, and we basically said, there really isn't much more cartographic work that you can do to find efficiency. So we've got to have a breakthrough. And so what we've done is we've gone completely digital. And everybody hears the term digital and says, okay, it's PDF, we're fine. I'm not talking about a PDF. I'm talking about a database-defined map that is a template, so directly out of the database. And so an example of this is you have a TSDN. That TSDN and everything in that TSDN is not constructed in a hard copy. It's actually constructed into the database and provides the data visually. You have a flood profile that will take a lot of time and effort. You don't do that anymore. You basically take the data and you put it in the system, and you actually have point-and-click BFEs. You have floodway data. That data is now in the system, and you can actually click on the stream and actually get discharges. You have survey information. If it'll come up. Survey information. All that survey information is in the database as well, and you can actually gather information about the survey, the pictures. And then finally, if you have flood risk information, you can calculate and display that flood risk information. The concept is basically one source for all products, and it has dramatically changed our production process. This is an example of back in 2012 when we were implementing this, and the traditional approach would have been to take 560 new miles of stream study, and then we would publish cartographically 423 maps. Well, we told FEMA, let us use the money, let us do it digital, we'll pay the difference if we have to, but let us try this out. We produced the exact same digital study with all of the same streams, but we also took all of the rest of the streams and all of those counties, completely digitized those into the database. We also went out and studied the first floor elevations of all the buildings, and we did it at 2.6% less than what it would have cost doing cartographically. So for us, that's significant. What does it do for us? This is a view of our current website for the FIS study. You can click on any of these different items. It'll allow you to pull up floodway data. If it'll come up, there it is on that stream. You have the ability to also pull up summary of discharges off of that stream. You have the ability to do limited detail studies. And here's the thing, I don't know about y'all, but a FIS report's pretty thick to flip through, and a lot of times it becomes a doorstop. So you can click any part of the FIS report you want, and it auto-generates exactly the pieces that you want. Nothing more than that. And this is just a flip. That. Sorry, folks, I'm flipping my finger as fast as I can. And so it's auto-generated this FIS. It also has the engineering studies. Many of you are asked for providing engineering data. The engineer model is actually in the database tied to the stream. And so someone can come in, click on the stream, understand what the model is, and actually then download the actual model that's in the database. So very quickly, because I know I'm probably starting to run out of time, the next one was, well, I know where my hazard is. We've gone digital, so can I actually understand what my true building risk is?
Okay, I see this 100-year line on the map. What does it mean? This line doesn't tell me that much. What are the real chances of my house flooding? How bad will it be? How much damage would a flood cause my house?
All right, so I think her words weren't catching up with her, or her words were moving faster. But the point is, a lot of people say, here's the 100-year line. So what does that tell me about my property? Now, it can tell you that you're in the flood theme, but what is the flood theme? So the map you just saw was actually where we went out and used a technology of an algorithm that took imagery, and it took all 5.2 million buildings that we have in North Carolina and actually gave it a building footprint. That was an endeavor, but it was not an expensive endeavor. Then we actually once again utilized LIDAR, and that LIDAR is driving along that road, and it actually is giving us a point cloud that we can take the first floor elevation. And so now with the building, we know where the building is located, but we also know where the livable space is. You could do it with mobile LIDAR, or you could do it with a laser such as this. And this is some of the information we collect: elevation data, the foundation type. We get several other bits of information. All of that information is then tied to a building. We will be using LIDAR, our future QL2 LIDAR, to help us actually know lowest adjacent grade, highest adjacent grade, corners of buildings that'll help us with elevation certificates. This is an example of the first building footprint that we did. Come on. This is actually, the green points are actual points from the new LIDAR, and you can see the new LIDAR is actually showing that the imagery drawing is off. And so what we'll be using this new one to give us a better sense of where the property is located. We then take all of that data and we're conflating it directly to the building. So we have characteristics about the building now. And these are the sets of information we have about the building, but we also have been adding insurance information, and I'll show how that has value to it. So we use a damage curve, depth damage curve. We take all of that information, come on, and we start doing risk assessment. And I bring this in just so people can understand what we're doing. We actually have the building footprints. We know the value from our parcel data. We actually have cross sections from the studies. We know what the flood elevation is, and so we began flooding all of the buildings. And by doing that, we know the first floor elevation for each of the buildings, and so we take the water surface elevation, we subtract that from the first floor elevation, and we start knowing how deep the building's going to be. And we actually know what the flood event will be. By having the value of the property, we then can start clicking on buildings, and we can start saying, for that building, I know exactly what the flood event will be for that building. But I also know for a 10, a 25, a 50, a 100, and a 500-year event, how deep it's going to be in that building and what the cost is going to be. So we're starting to be able to get to that level. Let me just flip through this. On the left-hand side, what you see up there is doing it by census block, the same set of information, and on the right-hand side is doing it by building. And the real issue here is there's a significant number of properties and costs associated with it, but they don't match. You can see there's more buildings by census, but a less of a cost. On the right is more properties, but less of an impact. The other point I wanted to bring up is the most important one in my mind when we're doing mitigation. When we're doing mitigation, we may be mitigating in the wrong locations. And so there's value in doing it at the specific property level.
Oh no, I never knew we had this much risk of damage in a flood. I've seen flooding on TV. I never thought something like that could happen to us. What do we do now? How do we prepare? What are our options? What is this flood insurance? Do we need it?
So many people come to us and they say, okay, well, thanks for telling me I'm in a hurt locker. Now what do I do? Well, what we've done is on this site down at the bottom, if I can get it to click to it, we basically provide different mitigation strategies. And we know what the cost is based on the property. And so we can give them a cost of each of the different types of mitigation strategies and give them an estimated return on a value for that based on 30-year loss avoidance. And that helps people start calculating, do I really want to elevate or do I need to do flood proofing? Well, the other side of the mitigation is you may not want to actually structurally do this, but you may want to pass on the issue to insurance. And this is a rating table for flood insurance. And you can see here, this is an algorithm that we've calculated. And based on the data that we have, out of our iRisk system that provides information about the buildings, we basically pull the year built so we know if it's a pre-firm or a post-firm. We also then pull from our system, from the insurance, what is the community rating status for where that property is located. Then we also have the ability, because we have it all in one system from the flood side, we know what the flood zone is. We then also know information about what the occupancy type is, how many different floors it has. That information, those characteristics are also in the system. And then finally, we know, of course, the base flood elevation and the first floor elevation. And by doing that and utilizing FEMA's current insurance rate calculator, we can actually start determining what the insurance rate would be for each of those properties. And so this is an example on our website that basically allows you, to click on insurance, and it basically for that property tells you a rate. It calculates the rate, whether it's a pre-firm or a post-firm, and you decide which one you are when your building has been built. But then you have the ability here to make any changes to those different attributes, and it will recalculate what your insurance range will be. And we believe that this is of great value for people trying to figure out, okay, what is my insurance rate and how is it actually calculated? We then also have the ability to deal with preferred risk. And so if you feel like you're in a preferred risk area, you have the ability to make a few changes. And based on that, you have the ability to calculate a preferred risk. And it gives you a little printout of it. I've got two more of these. I think this one is the most important one, and then I may flip through a few others. If you'll click on this one, y'all listen quick on this.
I can have to go through so many locations just to find out about my risk. I need one app that I can download and get the answer in a couple seconds. Come on.
All right, so how many of you understood that? Okay, how many of you understand millennials? Well, I think it's already been stressed. Millennials are the next generation, folks. If we don't provide a one-stop shop that they can do it on their iPhone or do it some way that they can do it, they're not going to use it. So what North Carolina is trying to do is we're trying to do a one-stop shop very quickly. This is our site where we provide all kinds of information about the actual flood hazard, the flood risk on the building. You can click on the building. You have the mitigation component. You have the ability to develop a flood risk plan that many of you work on and click different mitigation strategies. As I said, it's digital, so you have the ability, you have the ability for it to do an automatic document for you or a map. This is our Fermet. Basically, someone can go anywhere in the state of North Carolina, and it creates a Fermet based on the database, so you can slide across the whole state, and it changes all the data in the Fermet for you on the fly on an 8.5 by 11. And then the final bit of this is the insurance side that we just talked about. So we're not there yet. We don't have Siri telling the millennials what they need to know. But we feel like we're getting close to having one location that someone can go through the full discussion, the full analysis of what their flood risk is. I'll also just say we actually have 3 other states in our system as well now. And we're looking to add others if you're interested, because we are in a digital environment. Can you in the back flip through this real quick for me? Just okay. Flip through it.
We'll do.
I'll just say we're now using this on a flood risk real time. This is our flood warning system. If you'll flip a couple slides for me, I apologize, but I know I'm running out of time. Basically, at every gauge, we have the ability to calculate what the damage is real time, as well as forecasted, if you'll flip through it. And then not just by gauge, but we're now able to do it by full stream. And there'll be a breakout for this. So last slide. Basically, there are a number of sayings that at least we've been working off of that I think you should, or you are as well. You know, Bob Dylan said, "A rolling stone gathers no moss." We had to develop a plan, and we've come up with 3 different phases in North Carolina. Hopefully you've got a plan. Another one is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. North Carolina has attempted to take advantage of every struggle or situation to try to improve on that. Boldly go where no one has gone before. You've heard that before, right? We actually need to get out of our comfort zone and start utilizing or leveraging efficient technology such as LiDAR. The old Alka-Seltzer statement, right? I can't believe I ate the whole thing. North Carolina has not eaten the whole thing at one time. It's taken us 15 years to do this. But what we've done, like our vitamins, we've taken a daily morsel of the elephant every day. And that's allowed us to get to this point. He can sell water to a drowning man. Y'all have ever heard that? Most of us need to understand, and I think y'all do, that the people that deal with the money do not understand flood maps. So somehow, some way, we've got to sell them or help them understand, not that flood themes are sexy, but they certainly help out in their economics. And that's an important factor that we've communicated. Then finally, I've never met a man I didn't like from Will Rogers. We have partnered with about 35 different entities, and we've been able to leverage $18 million from that. There's a lot of other people that need your data that you're getting and your flood information, and I would just encourage that. So sorry for the flipping, but thank you very much.